So the opening weekend for Dead & Company's residency at the Sphere in 2025 is done. And there's one performance in particular that I wanted to highlight for you guys on the channel, and it's Sugary and the solo that John does. And I don't listen to a lot of Dead & Company. This shouldn't be news to anyone who's following the channel. I don't listen to a ton of, this stuff, but I really enjoyed this specific solo that John did for this performance, and what makes it even better is the guitar that he is using, and it's the Fender Custom Shop Jerry Garcia Alligator Stratocaster. Just obviously a really cool tribute to see John again right away using this guitar with Dead & Company, and he sounds fantastic with it, just like you would expect. So let's take a listen to this amazing solo. The footage was taken from my friend Robert, who had just, as you can see, just an incredible spot right in front of John at the Sphere. Doesn't get much better than that. Now, seeing John with the Custom Shop Alligator Tribute Strat isn't that big of a surprise. He used it with Dead & Company at the Sphere during their residency in 2024, and it was also present with them at rehearsals in one of the teaser shots of the guitar rack that was shared prior to the opening weekend kickoff. I'm a little surprised to see John using it so soon, but obviously he's loving the guitar and channeling that sound of Jerry's and that kind of inspiration from it. So very cool to see John using it right away, but from what I've seen, at least so far, predominantly the Dead Spec Silver Sky has been the guitar that John has been using for most of these performances so far. And before I get into the amp setup that John is using so far, at least for this year's residency, and just a quick discussion about the pedal board as well, I did want to just go back to last year when John did use the Alligator Stratocaster, the fact that how before he went on stage, it just was so cool how he posted to his story, gonna play this for a couple of tunes tonight. It's a replica. I was practicing with it in the dressing room and it was feeling too good to put down. Don't want to pull a sneaky on you in case obviously we thought that he was using the real Alligator Strat, because this is such a dead-on replica from the custom shop of Jerry Garcia's own Alligator Stratocaster, and it was obviously really cool to see John using it last year for the first time. I believe the first time John had used an actual dead-on replica of a Jerry guitar before, and then after the performance he went to his story again and mentioned, I forgot that the output on this guitar is hot and my rig wasn't dialed in for the unbridled fury of Jerry's guitar tone. So when we had seen it with him for rehearsals, obviously we had all kind of, or at least I had kind of speculated that, okay, knowing that before, John's obviously going to dial in his rig a little bit more so that he can probably use this guitar more during this year's residency, so that's actually the rig's a bit more happy, and he's at least a bit more happy, him and Jeremy as guitar tech, with the tone that they're getting with that guitar. So to see him using it opening weekend obviously means that throughout the entire rig, they were very conscious that, okay, we want to use this guitar again, and we weren't quite prepared for how hot of the output of the guitar was, so let's just dial the rig in a little bit more to actually be able to use it live. So I think we are going to be seeing this guitar quite a bit for this year's residency, and I'm all here for it. I thought John sounded absolutely awesome with this guitar in his hands. The tone was really great from the few different clips from the solo that I've played in this video for you guys. But I'll play just a little bit of an example of last year's as well, so you guys can kind of have in one video some of the sounds from last year's, as good as we've been able to get at least of John with that from the residency last year. Then kind of, you know, hear the 2025 one from this video as well. You guys get what I'm saying. Now, as far as the pedal board is concerned, I actually haven't seen from the opening weekend at least any real shots, images, video footage even, that would help kind of pinpoint what John is actually using. I would assume it's probably pretty close to it, if not mostly identical to what he used last year, that massive pedal board setup. And I made a video going over all of that stuff as well, just kind of speculating what John might be using. So as far as pedals are concerned, probably the usual things, but it's hard to tell obviously at this point. But the one other thing that we can tell from some of the footage from the opening weekend is the amp rig, and I was very curious to see whether or not John would stick with the same amp rig that he used for the last year's residency or change things up a little bit, but it is in fact appearing to be completely identical to the one that we saw for the vast majority of the 2024 residency, where you have the Dumble Ultraphonics modded Bandmaster, you have the Fender Twin Reverb with the Soldano Space Box on top of it, and then the 50-watt Dumble Overdrive Special as well, rounding off John's triple amp setup so far. This might change, you know, it did change at the Sphere before, where John was using the Dumble Small Special before, then swapped to this new Ultraphonics Bandmaster. So some things like that could change, but the way the Sphere's venue is set up and everything, I wouldn't count on there being any drastic changes, because they're trying to, you know, go for a specific sound in this venue, and it's a little bit more complicated. And speaking of that whole process as well, the cabs don't matter for what you're seeing on stage, because, as I've covered in a separate video, John is doing the entire loading dock, big crate, studio ISO cab thing, where he's got a few different external cabinets that the amps are being fed into and then mic'd up in the loading bay of the Sphere. So John's still pushing air, John is still playing real amplifiers, but there's no sound coming from the amps on stage. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're listening to this footage and seeing them at the Sphere. But these are the three amplifiers that John is using. When it comes to the entire Sphere thing and this setup as well, the next video that I'll have coming out on the channel is actually talking about the Universal Audio pedals, like the Gmatic, you know, kind of the Dumble in a box pedal, simulator kind of thing, the Ruby as well from Universal Audio. I have a video where John kind of talks about some of the stuff in a recent interview, so does Bob Weir. So I'll share that in the next video, so stay tuned to the channel if you want to listen to that and kind of my conversation around those topics and some of the clips of the interview from John. But until the next video, guys, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll be covering lots of Dead & Company now that the residency has finally kicked off. If there's any footage as well you want to hear me discuss on the channel, link it in the comments down below. Take care, guys.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.